The Arctic is Europe's largest area of true wilderness. It's a world of dramatic landscapes and incredible animals. Animals that have had to adapt to survive in one of the most hostile and dangerous climates on Earth. Ice defines this place as Arctic. It affects everything here. It shapes the landscape. It shatters rocks. It controls the climate. And in all its forms, it's a challenge to life. This apparently barren place stretches from central Scandinavia to the North Pole. Only 20,000 years ago, all of northern Europe would have looked like this. There was little life. Ice covered the land as far south as London, Paris, and Warsaw. Remote, forbidding, and thought to have no value to civilization, the polar regions were largely ignored until the late 19th century. This is a magical, mysterious place. For 3 months a year, it's a land of near total darkness, untouched by the sun. During the long dark winters, the northern lights are all that interrupt the never-ending black winter sky. Solar winds, drawn magnetically to the poles, create mysterious, waving curtains of light as they strike the atmosphere. It's April in northern Scandinavia, and light starts to spread across this silent, frozen world. The spring sun brings warmth that releases the icy grip on the land. Scandinavia's great northern rivers that have been silent and still for months become noisy, ice-filled rapids as they drain the winter away to the seas. Norway's dramatic, mountainous west coast warms in the year's first sunshine. The last of the snow melts, and as if to officially announce the start of spring, visitors arrive from the south. Barnacle geese come in their thousands to feed on the recently exposed vegetation. They have flown non-stop from their wintering grounds in the Solway Firth on the borders of Scotland and England. After a journey of more than 1,500 kilometers, the geese need to rest and refuel. The barnacle goose, one of the smaller members of the goose family, breeds only on remote islands far above the Arctic Circle, so this is just a temporary halt. Flowers bloom under the lengthening spring sunshine. Wide open areas by water, with little or no cover for approaching predators, provide the perfect grazing for geese. After a few weeks of food and rest, the geese leave on the final stage of the long flight to their nesting grounds. From this point north, it's too cold for trees to grow, and the landscape becomes scrubby tundra. The journey north has brought the geese across the North Sea to their refueling stop. Then, flying out across the Barents Sea, they navigate towards a group of islands jutting out of the sea ice. Close to the North Pole, the islands of Svalbard are Europe's most northerly land. Few places on Earth are as bleak, cold and hostile to life as the Arctic in winter. Yet some animals have found ways to cope with the conditions. The first migrant birds to arrive from mainland Europe for the summer are snow buntings. Even in the middle of April, storms are common, so they bury themselves in the snow till the blizzard passes. One animal that cannot migrate is the reindeer. During winter, most of their food is hidden by ice, but they survive by eating lichen from the rocks. Fulmars are the first birds to mate and nest. They need to start early in order to incubate their eggs and raise their chicks before the end of the short summer. Fulmars are the northern cousins of the great ocean wanderers, the albatross, and spend all year at sea, coming to land only to nest. For the first time in 5 months, a female polar bear emerges from her underground snow den, where she gave birth to her cubs. By mid-April, there's continual sunshine, but even now, air temperatures rarely rise above freezing. Polar bears are the world's largest land carnivore and are perfectly adapted to live in the Arctic. They evolved from the brown bear, perhaps as recently as 10,000 years ago. They spend their whole lives roaming the ice, following their favorite prey, seals. The massive bearded seal, weighing as much as a polar bear, is common around Svalbard. Although they have a thick layer of blubber to insulate them from the intense cold, the key to a seal's survival is year-round access to the ocean. For this reason, they follow the ice flows, as the water temperature is often 30 degrees warmer than the air. A bear's sense of smell is acute, and they can smell a seal up to a kilometer away, even detecting them under the ice. Although supremely agile on land, polar bears with their semi-webbed toes are also strong swimmers. They will often stalk their prey in the water, where they can be much less visible, hidden among the ice. only 1 in 20 of all polar bear hunts are successful. At the end of April, for the first time, the polar bear mother brings her cubs out from the protection of the den. The twins, sometimes there are 3 cubs and very occasionally 4, were born in December, weighing less than 1 kilogram. On their first outing, they must try to find their feet in this icy world. Although the cubs already have their protective fur, they haven't yet an insulating layer of fat, so they're very vulnerable to low temperatures. For now, they'll only stay out for short periods. Apart from the weather, male polar bears are the family's only danger. A male may try to kill the cubs so as to mate with their mother, as only then will she be receptive. From the den's high vantage point, she keeps watch and smells the air. As the light gets higher in the sky and temperatures rise, the previously bleak, windswept and near uninhabitable place is transformed, for some, to a perfect summer residence. Svalbard has the largest little auk colonies in the world, with more than 1 million breeding pairs. Little auks, the size of a starling, are the most abundant and smallest of the auk family, which includes razorbills and the colourful puffin. Little auks feed exclusively from the sea, almost entirely from the vast shoals of tiny shrimps. They winter on the ice edge, far offshore, in the Barents Sea, and arrive early on the islands to mate and claim the best nest site, deep among the boulders. The mother crouches to allow her cubs to feed. Fed by her rich milk, they've increased in weight by an incredible 20 times since their birth. But this has had an adverse effect on her. Having not eaten for 5 months, she is now half the weight she was when she entered the den in December, and she is weak. However, she will have to wait still longer before she can feed, for she can't leave the cubs unprotected and alone, and they need to be stronger and more coordinated before they can roam the ice floes with her. Mother and cubs will stay together for the first 2.5 years. During this time, she will teach them how to hunt for food and everything about survival in this unforgiving place. Only when her cubs leave her will she mate again. Till then, she'll feed and protect them and encourage them to explore their cold, icy world. For the moment, investigating a snowball is all that concerns them. Svalbard's mountains rise to 1,700 meters, are permanently clothed in ice and snow, and are cut through by glaciers. The arrival of the barnacle geese heralds the approach of summer on the islands. At first, the geese will land in the clear patches among the snow, where the grass has already started to grow. After feeding here for a week or so, they'll move to nesting sites close to the sea, where year after year they've raised their chicks. Even though they pair for life, males have to protect their partners from juveniles seeking their first mate. Food is still scarce, but geese aren't the only animals in search of new grass. The reindeer, after a winter of only eating dry, unpalatable lichen, welcome the fresh food. Reindeer's sharp hooves, designed for walking across the ice, make efficient tools for finding fresh grass. They'll feed constantly through the summer, building up their fat reserves before, once again, ice covers everything. Like the reindeer, Arctic foxes cannot leave the islands in winter. They too don't hibernate, as they're unable to build up enough fat during the short summer. The cubs were born in an underground den during winter, and the warm spring sun brings them out to play. The cub's mother, already losing her thick white winter coat, alarms a pair of newly arrived geese. A male polar bear returns to a kill it made previously. One advantage of living in a freezer is that food is preserved for a long time. All bears will first strip a seal of the skin and blubber, for this gives them the most energy. Only later, if they return to a kill, will they eat the meat. Within seconds, gulls arrive, ever ready to pick up scraps. The beautiful, all-white ivory gull is a true Arctic bird, spending its whole life among the ice floes of the north, almost solely feeding from polar bear kills. The raucous, aggressive glaucous gulls are anxious for a share. Even to a polar bear, they're noisy and annoying. When full, the bear again hides the meat from scavengers. When she is confident that the cubs are strong enough and driven by her desperate need for food, the mother at last leads her cubs away from the security of the den on the mountain. It's unlikely the cubs will ever return here, although a female may one day come back to give birth, near where she herself was born. Males, however, will roam the ice floes for the whole of their lonely lives. These cubs are about to enter a world where only the strong survive, and this, their first year, will be the most difficult. By June, the continuous light and warm ocean currents from the Gulf Stream transform Svalbard. Huge blocks of glacier ice that broke away last year drift into the ocean. They started their lives as part of a glacier thousands of years ago. Blue ice like this reflects light differently, since all the air has been crushed out by the immense weight of the glacier. Belugas, possibly the most beautiful of all the whales, move in, ghost-like, following the food that gathers around the ice edges. The beluga or white whale is a true Arctic species, spending all its life in these cold waters. So as not to be caught by the ice, it has no dorsal fin on its back. Their calling prompted early sailors to nickname them sea canaries. The seas in the Arctic are among the most productive in the world. A profusion of creatures reproduce and drift in the currents. These attract seals, whales, and huge numbers of seabirds. Guillemots and little auks are able to exploit this mass of food by diving and flying underwater to feed. In summer, Svalbard's towering sea cliffs become noisy, crowded tenements, with every available ledge and crevice occupied by thousands and thousands of seabirds. There's a constant coming and going, bringing food from the ocean. For the few species, only about 20 that can breed in this tough place, it's paradise, and they thrive in huge numbers. In the overcrowded center of the colony, Brunix guillemots stand shoulder to shoulder on the narrow ledges. Glaucous gulls nest on the windswept cliff top. The little auks have laid their eggs deep in burrows among the rocks at the base of the cliff. Gulls cruise the cliffs on the lookout for food. They feed on small birds, carrion, or by stealing from others. Once a gull gets too close, the alarm is raised, and almost as one, the colony takes to the air. In what must be one of the world's most spectacular natural displays, the auks fly round and round as a flock, seeking safety in numbers. Their flight is far from effortless, for to propel their chunky bodies through the air, they must continually beat their small wings. A gull will sometimes take a bird in mid-air, but may also land in an attempt to pick off an auk as it emerges from its burrow. Once the threat has gone, the little auks return to guard their burrows. Summer brings a rare sight to the shores of Svalbard, the largest members of the seal family in the northern hemisphere, walruses. Groups of females with pups haul themselves out of the water onto quiet beaches to rest. A young male polar bear, probably about 3 years old and spending his first year alone, has been left behind by the retreating sea ice. In order to kill a seal, a bear needs the ice as a hunting platform. The bear is tired, confused, and for the moment will stay hungry. The walruses are in little danger from polar bears since they fight with their sharp tusks and have thick skin that's difficult to puncture. Walruses were once very abundant around Svalbard. However, 3.5 centuries of hunting caused them to be on the verge of extinction until it was banned 40 years ago. The hungry bear must continue his search for food. Although seals are their favorite prey, they will sometimes take seabirds by swimming up from below. Arctic terns take advantage of the permanent daylight, constantly fishing the fjords to feed their hungry chicks, one tiny fish at a time. The polar bear takes the opportunity of feeding on tern chicks. a tiny snack for such a large animal. In an effort to drive it away, the adults dive-bomb the intruder. Intense hunger forces the bear to eat seaweed that's been washed up on the beach. The Arctic tern makes the longest migration of any bird, around 30,000 kilometers. It breeds here in the Arctic and then flies the complete length of the globe to winter in the Antarctic Ocean before returning the following spring. Svalbard reindeer are smaller and more stocky than those of Scandinavia. They're more closely related to Peary's caribou of North America, suggesting that they must have traveled across the polar ice cap to reach the islands. Although Svalbard doesn't have a predator that can kill a reindeer, they can come under attack from a most aggressive bird, the Arctic skua. The skua chick itself is no threat, but if a reindeer grazes too close, it will have to face the chick's fierce parents. At first, the skuas will just rip up moss and grass as a threat. When this has no effect, the adults will move to a high vantage point, from where they can mount a much more serious attack on the unsuspecting intruders. Supreme flyers, the Arctic skuas repeatedly dive-bomb the reindeer. If threats aren't enough, they may even pull hair from the reindeer's back. Seldom will a reindeer continue to feed under such an assault, so the grass around the skua chick remains lush and long. Reindeer aren't the only animals at risk. Arctic foxes have learned to treat the skua's territory with caution. The middle of August is high summer in the Arctic. Temperatures day and night can reach 7 or 8 degrees. Ice in the fjords has nearly disappeared. Tiny flowers bloom, short-stemmed to protect them from the near constant wind. A hot polar bear needs to keep exertion to a minimum. Kittiwakes wash and preen in a freshwater pool fed by melting snow. Living on the dirty, crowded cliffs requires these daily washing rituals to keep their flight feathers in pristine condition. They never bathe in the sea and need fresh water to drink, so ponds like these are important. For a polar bear with layers of insulating fat and thick fur, summer can be unbearable. It's 40 degrees warmer now than in winter. The heat has become a serious problem for the stranded, hungry young bear, and he must try to cool down. During summer, mist and cloud can shroud the Arctic for days on end, but the constant feeding goes on day and night. By August, the kittiwake chicks are large, but they must wait until their wing feathers are fully grown before leaving the nest. The guillemot chicks, however, leave their ledges before they can fly. Quite a feat, since the sea is sometimes up to 1 kilometer away and a long way down. One bright night at around midnight, the first guillemot chick, accompanied by some adults, leaps from the cliff and glides down to land in the sea. Predators gather for the coming feast. Over the next few nights, one after the other, the whole colony follows. The fox cubs just want to play, but their mother is alert for easy meals. The adult guillemots call constantly from the sea, in an effort to guide the stranded chick towards them. The fox hears the chick's calls. The chick makes a dash towards the sea. The fox is faster, and the young guillemot is caught. The foxes rush their catch back to their den, where it will be stored to feed the family through the winter. Glaucous gulls attempt to pick young guillemots out of the water, or may even fly in behind a chick and snatch it in mid-air. On rare occasions, an adult will land with a chick that has crashed short of the ocean. It will hurriedly shepherd the chick away from the foxes towards the beach and the relative safety of the sea. But this is a dangerous strategy, for the adult puts itself at great risk for the sake of its chick. Alone and confused, the chick calls for help. A gull attempts to take the chick from the water, but instinct makes it dive. Soon it finds other guillemots and is able to seek protection. Before long, the gulls are so full that although driven by an instinct to kill, they end up just watching the chicks pass. Foxes, however, continue to store the birds away for winter's lean times ahead. A young fox cub's first hunting trip can be traumatic, for he needs to be bold and confident. If the cub hesitates at all in his attack, the tables can turn and the chick ends up chasing the fox. This time the young guillemot escapes, but next time the fox will be more experienced and it's unlikely he'll fail again. As the guillemots gather in increasing numbers, they start swimming to the feeding grounds out at sea. While the chicks' flight feathers grow, the adults molt theirs, and for several weeks neither are able to fly. At last, desperate for food, the young polar bear swims off in search of seals. By now he's extremely weak, and he may have to swim for 100 kilometers for food. He may die in the attempt. Death is something the islands are used to. From the end of the 19th century until the 1960s, beluga whales were hunted in the waters around Svalbard. In the cold, dry land of the Arctic, where nothing decays, the piles of bleached bones will remain forever as a reminder. The huts built by the trappers and early explorers stand as a testament to those times. Today, Svalbard is still a sparsely populated place, but 40 years ago, things were different. During the 1950s and 60s, groups of trappers would be shipped to Svalbard's remote islands, where they hunted animals for their skins that were later made into clothing and decorations. In incredibly harsh conditions, with very little equipment, apart from sledges pulled by dogs, the trappers spent a year at a time on the islands. with winter temperatures of -30, 4 months of darkness, and no contact with the outside world. It was an exceptionally tough life. They built special traps known as set guns, basically a box containing a rifle with seal blubber as bait attached to the trigger. When investigated by an animal, the gun would fire with fatal consequences. Hundreds of polar bears were killed in this way. Any cubs orphaned by the killing will be taken back to the mainland to sell to circuses and zoos. Arctic foxes were killed in an equally brutal way. Rocks heaped up on wooden frames crushed the fox when it took the bait. Just moving huge frozen polar bear carcasses in these conditions took incredible effort. Once the bear skins had been removed from the carcasses, they were preserved with salt and packed into barrels for shipping back to the mainland the following year. Bear skins like these were solely used for rugs and wall hangings. Arctic fox skins were made into fur coats and hats. Today, polar bear hunting is illegal, but there are still a few trappers scraping a living on the islands. Most of their work now is based around tourism and collecting the valuable eider down from the eider duck's nests. By the middle of September, the islands are changing. It is already autumn. The grass and flowers have seeded. The sun has dropped nearer the horizon, and the bird cliffs are empty and quiet. In the Arctic, winter is never far away. With the first snows, temperatures plummet, and most of the wildlife that came during summer retreats south. Some animals, like the reindeer, the Arctic fox, and the polar bear, cannot leave. They must stay and face the most hostile weather on the planet. Here in the Arctic, there's a fine line between life and death. The young polar bear that struggled to find food through the summer died when the cold weather returned. Once more the sea freezes, and the polar bears have even greater expanses of ice over which to roam. By early November, the light has almost receded, and the Arctic returns to a wind-battered realm of ice and snow.